This is the Sickle Cell Advocates of DC, and we're here with Chris Sweet.
Thank you.
And he recently had a stem cell transplant, and we're here to talk to him more about it. When did you first realize that you had sickle cell?
I was first diagnosed when I was a baby.
Mm-hmm. And as you were growing up, how did it affect your life?
As I was growing up, I dealt with sickle cell my whole life, from transfusions, hospital admissions, surgeries, a lot of things. I mean, I had a stroke when I was 19.
Mm-hmm.
I had a small heart attack in my 20s. So, I mean, I've seen the gambit, everything from blood infections to pulmonary hypertension type of issues. When I initially came for the transplant, I was using oxygen 6 liters all the time.
Wow. So
today I'm happy to sit here and say I don't have to wear oxygen and carry it everywhere I go. I mean that's a pain. And anyone who currently has sickle cell and has to use oxygen understands how much of an inconvenience it can be if you want to go somewhere. You know, you have to make sure you have enough oxygen to go with you. Sometimes, I mean, it can feel like a sharp pain, like a sharp stabbing pain. It can feel like a throbbing pain. Sometimes you hurt so bad to where the pain might be in your back, but you can feel it in your stomach because it's throbbing like that, throbbing that bad to where it's echoing. There's like an echo to it. You know how you go somewhere, you yell, and your voice goes on for three or four more times. You hear your voice. Well, that's how that pain can be sometimes. You know, it's in your back, but you're feeling it all in your stomach, and you're like, oh man, what? I mean, and that's what happens, and it varies. It depends on the person and how their pain, you know, shows up, how their pain crisis shows up. Because some people have really sharp pain, and it might be in their tummy. Some have pain where it's in their back. You know, some have pain in their knees. Other people don't get pain in their joints. Others have, you know, issues with shoulders and bones. It really depends on the person, on the child or the adult, you know, how much pain they have and where that pain typically shows up when they're going into a crisis. The lady from Europe, when they did their video on sickle cell pain, she said that the pain was 10 times worse than giving labor. That was the pain as she described it. And for people who've been through labor, you know, the women who've been through that, that's probably an accurate depiction of how that pain feels. Will I be able to provide for my family down the road? You know, will I be able to do those things? And sometimes you can't because you're so sick. You know, who's going to hire you if you're going to be out sick, you know, 90% of the time? You might come to work 2 weeks straight, then the next 3 weeks you're out sick. Right. You know, it's going to be very hard for you to get a job and keep a job in that aspect. Even college, for that instance, going to school. I mean, a lot of people who have sickle cell have been through the public school system. Right. And teachers not really understanding that you're willing to do the work, but you're not able to be in class every day. You know, they send the homework home, you do the homework, but they still fail you, even though you've done the homework and you passed the test because you didn't show up. I mean, those hurdles are hard to get over because you're not there. And they don't necessarily understand or can't grasp it because they don't realize that sickle cell can be just as bad as cancer. Right. You know, as far as your ability to come to school and not come to school.
So I imagine all of that of your life experience is what propelled you to seek out a permanent treatment for your sickle cell. What made you go with stem cells instead of the traditional bone marrow transplant that they have?
Actually, the reason I went with stem cells and I looked at the half-match transplant was more of primarily looking for something for adults. For a lot of years, I've been looking for something for adults because when you get to a certain age, it's like they want to give you medicine, give you transfusions, and that's it. Your options are to live with the disease, and whatever happens, you got to kind of take it and keep going, you know. And I have 3 girls at home, and my ideal life would be to be around to watch them grow up. Right. And so with some of the issues I was experiencing in my health, I felt like this was my only option.
Why did you get the half-match stem cell transplant?
The half-match stem cell transplant allowed me to have a bone marrow transplant from a related donor.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a donor that I could get a transplant from, so the best option was a half-match transplant.
And the half-match transplant was in order to combat and treat your sickle cell anemia, is that correct?
That's correct.
And what type of sickle cell do you have?
I have SS sickle cell, and the actual half-match transplant was initially started at Johns Hopkins in 2009. So the National Institute of Health started doing half-match transplant in 2010.
Okay. So are you like one of their first patients then?
I'm number, let's see, I think I'm number 7.
Wow.
Number 7.
So you are kind of the guinea pig for this type of stuff.
I am the guinea pig. I'm the one that's breaking the mold.
Can you tell us about who your donor was and how that played out and how long you had to wait to receive a donation?
My donor was my younger half-brother. Actually, my mother was first tested, and she was the first one to make the trip out to Maryland with me to check on having the transplant, and she was my initial donor that I thought I would have would be my mom. I also tested my 3 brothers. I have an older brother, half-brother. I have 2 younger half-brothers. I then also tested my children as well to see, just in case they might be able to donate. You kind of go through the different people and see who's going to be the best one, who's going to fit the mold, who's going to be able to donate the bone marrow to you if it's at all possible. And ended up being my younger brother, Sidney Sweet.
Okay.
And he's 29 now. So I mean, and it's a blessing that he was as close a match as he was. We were the same blood type, and he was a 7 out of 10 match.
Wow.
Typical bone marrow transplants, they want 10 out of 10. He just happened to be 7 out of 10, so that was a good enough match.
Great.
And the one thing that I did learn about the half match is that typically, if you're a male getting a half match, they want your donor to be a male.
Right.
If you're a female, they want your donor to be female. So they said it's better chance of it being successful if you have a male to male donor as opposed to a male to female donor.
Right. And as we can see, yours has been very successful. Can you walk us through the treatment process a little bit?
Okay. First thing they do is verify, one, that you're going to be able to survive the transplant, because the first thing they don't want to do is put you on a path to have a transplant if you're not going to survive, if you're not, your body is not healthy enough to survive. And that's one of the biggest things that has affected people with sickle cell who are adults from getting transplanted is our bodies are so damaged from the disease process that we don't survive a lot of times when we go through the transplant process. So that was number 1. And I think I was out here, I made 4 trips before they were okay with me having a transplant. Now, after I got here, the first major thing they did was start me on Campath, which is chemo.
Okay.
So I had 5 days of chemo.
And what does the chemotherapy do?
Basically, it tears down your immune system. When I say it tears it down big time. And so you go through, shakes, chills, might have a fever, but they give you Demerol for that, and they don't know why Demerol works, but Demerol works to get rid of the symptoms. Then after that, they do what's called radiation. So I had, I think, 2 days of radiation, and the radiation was for an hour. And you have to remember that this radiation, this chemotherapy is significantly less. When I say less, I mean way less than what they normally give people who suffer with cancer. So when you have a friend or somebody that says, hey, I'm going to cancer treatment, when they get radiation, they're probably going to get 10 to 20 times the dosage that I got.
Wow, that's significant.
It's a lot. It is a lot.
And even still, the amount that you got was very harsh.
Was very harsh. But the benefits of it was it broke down my immune system. And the other part of it is because they didn't use as high dosage of radiation in chemotherapy, it's a better chance of a good outcome. Because in the past, when they would do a bone marrow transplant for adults, they would do radiation as though they were giving you a transplant if you had leukemia, and we wouldn't survive. had a very high mortality rate, meaning most of us died during that process. So they had not done a lot of transplants for adults in the past. They stopped doing it.
So after you do the chemo and the radiation, is that when they inject the cells?
Oh yeah. After the chemo and the radiation, they do the stem cell transplant, and it's just like receiving a blood transfusion. They have a big bag, looks like almost like blood, just the color is a little bit different, and it runs. And it's actually not one bag. They gave me, I think I ended up with 6 bags of stem cells.
Wow.
And what they do is they do their best to get any cell other than the stem cell out of there, but they can't get all of them. So you're definitely going to have a little bit of reaction because your body's going to say, hey, this isn't mine. Some of this stuff isn't right. And it's going to fight. And so that was part of it. That happened over one day. And they call that your birth date. So that's day 0.
Okay.
So from that day, they started counting forward. And then it's all about watching your counts go down. Once they go down, how long they stay down, and then coming back up. They wait for them to come back up. And when they come back up, then they start saying, okay, now your body is starting to reproduce everything, starting to get everything.
And it's reproducing
the
cells that they
cells and everything everything. And then slowly they watch your blood count change. Perfect example, my hemoglobin used to run between say the low 7s, high 6s. If it got to 6.4, that meant I needed a transfusion.
Wow.
Now it's running about 11.
That's amazing.
So,
and this is only in the course of a couple of weeks, is that correct?
This is a course of, it's been running 11 for the last 3 or 4 visits I've been, and they check my blood every time I come in. It's been at least 11.
Wow. And so, what day are you on now from your birthday?
I am, I think somewhere around 140.
So 140 days.
Somewhere around 140.
That's amazing. And have you had many adverse reactions to it?
I've had some side effects from the transplant, but that's mostly due to the medication they have to give you. They give you a medicine called sirolimus, which is I guess it's to help you keep your body from fighting the immune system or the cells that are in there from somebody else so much. They also have me on another medicine called Bactrim and penicillin. Some of these medicines are help to keep you from getting an infection because my immune system is brand new. I have to go through the process that kids go through now of getting all my shots over again. So I have to start from scratch. I have to revaccinate, and I can't revaccinate for a year.
So you have to wait a whole year
before I can revaccinate, before I can start revaccinating. So once you do transplant, you have to go through all these steps over again because your body, everything is new.
It's as if you are a brand new person.
It's like being a baby.
Wow.
You're starting over. I mean, I didn't grasp it at first, but now I'm like, okay, well, yeah, everything is new, so okay, you're going to be more susceptible to this and some of the other things. So you have to take more care. You have to, carry hand cleaner with you and wipe your hands more and not touch your face as much. Get your flu shot earlier than you normally would to make sure that you're not susceptible, so that if you do get a cold, it's not something really bad, because at this point, if you got an infection, it would be, something that you really got to take care of quickly. It's not something that you need to, not play around with, where, sicklers, we don't like to go to the hospital, so I'd be forced to go to the hospital if I got a bad infection, because it's important to get it taken care of quickly.
So would you recommend this treatment to others? What was the thought process in your decision? Would you recommend it to others?
The thought process in my decision was more of where my health state was and what did I see going forward. Did I see getting better or getting worse? I would recommend it to other people. I mean, it's night and day. It's night and day. From how I was before the transplant to how I am now, there's a significant difference. And I can honestly say that I feel better today than I felt, in June before I got the transplant. I can honestly say that. And I can say if I had somebody close to me that needed to go through the process, I would tell them that, yeah, it's better for them to go through it than not go through it. Things that I wanted to do before I couldn't do or wasn't able to finish, I feel like I have the opportunity to do that now. And that's something that you kind of lose when you have sickle cell, because you have all these things and your mind is like, but your body's like, I'm not going to do that today. So it's one of those things where you just have to, you take every day as a blessing, and then when something comes up and you're able to feel more like a normal person, you look at it and say, okay, how can I take advantage of this? What can I do that I couldn't do before? And that's the way I'm looking at it. I would tell anybody who's thinking about doing a transplant to talk to your doctor, talk to your family members, look at your history, look at what things you've already been through. I mean, a while back I wrote a book called The World You Didn't Know. And it basically talks about sickle cell and some of my experiences with the disease and my life, what I've gone through with it, some of my triumphs and some of the things that I've done with it, and some of my thought processes on the medical community as a whole when dealing with patients with sickle cell. Don't get me wrong, there are some very good doctors out there, but sometimes you run into some that don't have a clue. So, and I'm sure people who see this will say, yeah, that's true. But that's probably one of the other big things is make sure you get a doctor that cares about what's going on with your child or your adult. Because if your doctor isn't in your corner, then you need to find somebody else. It's important that you really consider all the factors before you do it, because although it can cure you,
right, there
are a lot of steps to go through to get there. And everyone who has a transplant isn't necessarily cured the first time they go through the process. They might have to go through it again, you know, and have to consider that too.
So do you have any last messages you'd like to give to anyone seeing this video who wants to know more? I understand you have a website where you've documented your whole process, and if you want to give us that so they can check it out.
Yeah, if you want to check out some of the videos I posted, and I'll be posting more videos from my transplant experience, you go to youtube.com/NoGameism. That's NOGAMEISM. And I'd just like to say to anybody who's thinking about it, if you want to find out what trials they have going on right now that might be something you want to look at, you want to go to clinicaltrials.gov and search sickle cell. There they'll have all the listings of transplants they might be having, new drugs that they're looking to put on the market, and they're looking to find people with sickle cell to check out and see if these drugs are going to work for us and do the right thing. BeTheMatch.com is where they need to go if they want to sign up to get on the bone marrow donor list. There's only 9 million donors in the U.S. And when it comes to people of African descent, Indian descent, Asian, Pacific Islander, ethnic people in general, we don't have very many people on that list. And so it makes it very hard for us to get transplants for anything, whether it's cancer, sickle cell, thalassemia, any type of blood-borne illness where you need a transplant to cure it. We're just not on that list.
Right.
So we can't donate to help each other. Right. Save a life. Get on the bone marrow donor list.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with us, Chris. And we hope that this information will help you. And we look forward to seeing you next time.
And I think what parents have to look for with their kids with sickle cell is, first thing is support, love and support. I would say you don't want to coddle them too much, because if you don't give them a chance to fly when they want to fly, then it's going to be really hard for them when they get older. And that's one thing I experienced myself. I felt like I didn't get enough leeway when I was growing up, you know, my teenage years, as my brother got, you know, or my cousin got, because I was sick. So my mom was more concerned with whether or not I was going to, you know, be sick or something. But I mean, it's like, as long as you lay the foundation and you know that I make good choices, give me a little bit of leeway. And it's harder when you're dealing with a sick child, because you're like, okay, I got to hold you tight. I'm not going to let you go. I got to hold you tight, make sure everything is all right for you. But the sickle cell child still needs that same leeway. They need that same support. And if they're saying, hey, I'm in pain, I'm not feeling well, then you have to take it for face value, whether they're crying about it or not crying about it. You know, because they could be at the beginning of that crisis and haven't got to that, you know, that really, really bad pain yet. Or they could be at the really bad pain and just be sitting still, you know, because they know if they move 1 inch, you know, it's going to be worse than if they just sit still for a little bit and see if it goes away. And that's sometimes what we'll do is just sit down somewhere, be still. If you can get him in activities, I would say if he wants to do activities, let him do the activities until he says, hey, I'm too tired to do this right now. You know, that's the best medicine for him. Treat him as normal as you possibly can. Because sometimes what happens when we have a child with an illness, we will say, oh, well, they can't do this or they can't do that. And let them decide, because they may say, hey, I can do that today. I may not be able to do it tomorrow, but I can do it today. And that will give them, it'll empower them to do more. You know, not rely on, hey, I'm sick all the time, so I can get out of doing this, doing that. Even with stuff at home, with chores and stuff. Hey, give them chores. I mean, I had chores. Just like anybody else.